The story takes place in the year 1897, back when Japan was in the Meiji era. However, it's not the same Meiji era we're all familiar with. No. In this alternate reality Japan, there are monsters, yokai, and even someone who can be considered an immortal. Well, it's not like most of us know much about what it was like back in the Meiji era, let alone the Meiji era of an alternate reality Japan. So let's just say that modernization was still in its baby phase back then. And the story of undead girl murder farce doesn't just take place in Japan either. No, it takes us to 19th century Europe as well. The anime begins with a scene of a guy called the Oni Slayer fighting impressively in a circus. He isn't fighting a fellow human being though, he's fighting monsters. This is his job. He makes a living by killing monsters in cage fights. It's an illegal fighting ring in a remote area that has somehow slipped under the radar. But if the authorities catch whiff of it, both the organizer and our boy are both definitely going to jail. Now, when our boy asks his boss the same question, a monster girl with a wiggly neck spits on him. His boss throws his cigarette at her in reply. Since the work is done, he goes to his room to have a drink and relax when he gets the sensation that someone has been following him. In the morning, he goes outside. There's a big crowd fighting over food. A few kids try to follow him, but when he smiles, they all get scared and run away. He stops at a store and gets himself some booze. The shop guy tells him to get his illness checked instead of wasting away on booze. And this is where it gets hinted that something happened to our boy which turned him into a demon slayer. Hell yeah, Oni means demons or monsters, so why not just call him Demon Slayer? As he continues to walk, he notices a group of grown-ass adults harassing a cat because they think it's a monster. They tell him to get rid of it because he's the Demon Slayer, but he apologizes because he only kills monsters and not real animals. They all call him a fraud and walk away. Though as fate would have it, he has to fight a cat-based monster in the evening. Anyway, when the fight is over, a maid dressed in a French outfit pulls the curtain to his room. She's the one who has been following him. He sees her coming though, and so the two of them take it outside. Now this mage is holding a birdcage with a sheet over it. He's curious about what's in the cage, so he tries to find out, but she just pulls a gun on him. But what our boy does next is something I've never seen anyone do at gunpoint. He's holding a drink, so he just pours it into the muzzle. This leads to hand-to-hand combat between them. The maid is good, but not good enough to defeat the Demon Slayer. He eventually pins her down on the ground. This is when she finally starts speaking, and it's not even her. In another woman's voice, she reveals to be a big fan and also reveals she already knows how our boy doesn't have long to live. He's half demon after all. The demon inside of him will soon take control of his conscience, and then there will be reckoning. Although she has a proposition. If he can kill her, she will help him prolong his life as a human. The sheet lifts up and we finally see what's inside the birdcage. It's a woman. A woman's head, that is. It doesn't take our boy long to figure out that she is the rumored immortal individual he has heard about. Her name is Aya Rindo, and she is a prominent detective called the Cage User. She looks like a 14-year-old, but she's actually 962 years old. As it turns out, her body stopped growing after the age of 14. Wait, where is her body in the first place? Why is there only a head? She explains that someone stole her body, and she has had no luck in getting it back. The one who stole her body was someone like our boy, a half-demon. She also adds that she saw a foreigner holding a bell after her body was taken from her. This rings a bell as it's the same guy who turned our boy into a half-demon. Anyways, all she wants is for someone to kill her, and she can tell that our boy will be able to kill her. After all, his demonic side is way stronger than the guy who stole her body. In reply, he tells her that they should relocate to another place. On their way, she keeps calling him Oni Slayer, or should I say Demon Slayer. He tells her that he has a name as well. It's Sugaru Shinuchi, and since she is sick of people calling him Oni Slayer, let's call him by his real name from now on. She asks him why he is so conflicted about living or dying. He wants to die, but he also makes an effort to live. Well, he gives her an unusual answer. He knows that the demon inside of him will soon take over, and he wants it to happen during one of those cage fights. The way he envisions it, it'll happen during the fight, and the demon inside of him will kill all the stupid spectators who think they are safe outside the cage. He'll kill them all. This is why he is interested in prolonging his life. He doesn't want to miss out on the moment he kills the spectators. Now, Aya asks him about when he is planning on killing her. He replies that she will prolong his life, but he won't kill her. Instead, they will go to Europe to search for her body. He's pretty sure that the two of them are looking for the same person. It's a European with an M printed on his cane. Alright, so how exactly is she going to prolong his life? Well, he'll have to eat her flesh and drink her saliva. Yep, it's the year 2023. Main characters now drink saliva to get stronger, and you had the nerve to laugh at Izuku Midoriya for eating All Might's hair. Alright, so the guy kisses her next to the sea under the moonlit sky. Just like that, Sugura's human side becomes stronger and starts making it difficult for the demon to take control of him. Meanwhile, in France, there is a family of vampires. They catch a deer in the woods and talk about how they'll have to become friends with humans. It has been some time since the death of Count Dracula, so it's about time they make peace with humans. However, when they reach home, they see vampire blood on the floor. Papa Vampire tells his son to stick close to him and summons everyone in the house. The butlers and mansion show up, but they don't know anything. This is where Papa Vampire realizes that his wife didn't answer, so he goes to her room and sees her sitting on a chair with blood dripping from her. She has a light smile on her face, but she is already dead. This is the Godard family we're talking about. Papa Vampire is Lord Godard. When the humans hear about it, they rejoice because now there is one less vampire. There is a young reporter named Annie who tries to argue with them, tell them they are being racist, and then Lord Godard comes out from his house. He tells them to stop their discrimination against good vampires. He hasn't drunk blood in 20 years, and he also goes to church. Unfortunately, the police have been of zero help in solving the murder of his dear wife Hannah, so he decides to take measures in his own hands. He summons the detective known as the Cage User. Yes, it's Aya Rindo. He assures his family that the detectives can actually be trusted, unlike the police. In the wake of this, Aya, her maid, and Sugaru start their journey to France. They eventually arrive at the mansion. Wait, did they really drive all the way here to France on a horse cart? It's clear Sugaru doesn't like people very much because when the driver asks them for money after delivering them at their designated location, he starts lowballing the driver because the ride there was quite bumpy. Aya tells him to knock it off, so he tells the driver to go and get the money from the vampires since he doesn't have any. Vampires are really good people. They even offer the driver food and shelter for the night. Sugaru introduces himself as Aya's apprentice, and when Papa Vampire asks him where Aya is, he lifts the sheet and shows them. Even the vampires were taken aback. They all get concerned about her and ask her what happened to her body. She explains that it was stolen 2 years ago, and she has been living in a cage since then. Aya hears about the case and asks them to show her the body, but as it turns out, vampires are quick to decompose. They have already buried her, though they did take a picture. One look and Aya immediately states that the lady was killed in sleep, and it's clear that the killer exactly where the victim would be, and yet they still left evidence in the form of a bottle of holy water. It's very sus. Why did she not wake up considering how vampires' senses are better than a human's? Why did the vampire pull up at night when vampires are stronger? What's the purpose of leaving the holy water behind at the scene? How did the killer know that the silver stake that was used to kill was in the storage room? And why did the killer remove the silver stake after stabbing the lady with her? And why did the killer return the silver stake back to the storage room? Aya thinks it's someone from the castle, but Papa Vampire assures her that he fully trusts his servants. They have been living with them for 20 years. They all have dinner together. The driver joins as well. The vampires drink blood. They have to, otherwise they'd lose energy. But they don't drink human blood. Now, the vampires aren't sure if Aya is competent enough to solve the case, but Papa Vampire is confident in them. She asked them about what they were doing prior to the murder. They all had dinner like usual, and while his wife went to her room to rest, he went to study, and then went outside to hunt. When he picked up his rifle from the storage room, nothing was out of place, so the killer must have entered the chat after he left. After questioning them all, she narrows down the suspects to Alfred, the butler, and Godard Raoul. Even Papa Vampire finds this absurd. Raoul is family, but then again, it doesn't make much sense for the killer to be a stranger. Following the dinner, Sugaru, Aya, and Miss Maid are walking up to the room when they ask her about the investigation. She reveals there are 2 contradictions. She tells the maid to monitor the suspects, and so she leaves. Godard Claude then shows up and attacks Sugaru. He is angry at them for going so overboard with the investigation. Though after he leaves, Aya tells Sugaru that his hands were clean. Same goes for the rest of the vampires at the dinner table. They then go for a walk outside with Papa Vampire. They are in the middle of a conversation when Papa Vampire is hit with an arrow. He removes it and the wound closes up immediately. He then chases the culprit, who turns out to be a hunter named Joseph. He's planning on killing him, as he may have been the one who killed his wife, but Aya and Sugaru stop him. They need him for interrogation. During the interrogation, Joseph explains that another vampire named Hugo had come to the mansion about 3 days ago. He had come with the intention of killing a vampire with a silver stake, and was oddly confident about it. Why, you may wonder? Well, it's because Hugo had an ally in the mansion who was going to help him with the murder. But as it turns out, Hugo never returned. That's why Joseph came here in search of him. Aya then allows Joseph to go, which upsets Papa Vampire, but she tells him that she finally has everything she needs to find out the killer. How about it, guys? Can any of you guess who the killer is? Once Aya, Sugaru, and Papa Vampire go back inside, she gathers everyone and tells them she knows who killed the lady. First, she explains that even though Claus and Alfred were close to the lady's room, they still didn't hear any sound whatsoever. But she knows that the two of them aren't accomplices. They aren't the killers either. After all, the killer is Godard Raoul. Raoul immediately attacks Aya, hence revealing himself to be the culprit, but Tsugaru stops him, takes him outside, and starts beating him up. As you can expect, everyone is completely shook. Why did he kill her? How did he do it? Aya explains that the missing piece was Hugo. When Papa Vampire defeated him before the murder took place, Raoul used Hugo's silver stake and filled its case with holy water. He let it freeze outside and then used frozen holy water to kill the lady. Yes, the silver stake from the storage room wasn't used to kill her. Instead, he used holy water. That's why there's no sound. He left the storage room silver stake and holy water there on purpose to confuse everyone. Hugo was still in the picture though. He is the one who spilled blood on the silver stake. It was all for the purpose of making it look as though the murder was committed by a human. Raoul hated humans so much so that he killed his own mother just to make his father hate humans. Tsugaru easily kills Raoul because he is the demon slayer, and while the vampire family is in deep thought over what has happened, but since Aya's job is done, she is ready to leave. She does ask Papa Vampire about the man with an M on his cane, and for what it's worth, Papa Vampire knows that guy. He came here a few days back, introduced himself as Professor, and offered to take him to London, but he didn't accept the offer. Papa Vampire asks her if she knows the guy. She replies that it's the person who took her body and turned Tsugaru into what he is today. The next arc begins with a scene of a ship in the sea. Inside we see a man tied to a chair. His name is Eric. Someone named Arsène Lupin reveals himself to be his kidnapper. He wants him to be his assistant. Yeah, it's the thief Arsène Lupin, the one you've seen in Netflix shows, movies, and other media. He wants to steal something from a certain mansion, but the man tells him that there's Sherlock Holmes in London and how the mansion's security is impossible to get through, but Lupin is confident nonetheless. Following morning, newspapers feature a letter from Lupin about his upcoming heist. World-class detectives from all around the world express their interest in being hired for the job. Miss Annie reads the newspaper and is happy to see that the cage user will also be among them. As for Tsugaru and Aya, they enter a shop that sells sticks and gets the clientele list from the guy. Some men come after them for taking the client list, and while Tsugaru was fully in the mood to beat them up, there is a whistle and police arrive. They are all arrested, including the guy who whistled. We call him the guy for the next minute. There are also others who are arrested under suspicion of robbery. Aya is quick to deduce that they are guilty, and the guy affirms her by adding his own deductions. The thieves give in, and when they all start discussing the Lupin case, they mention that the detectives who will be hired for the job have already been decided. They are Sherlock Holmes and the cage user Aya. Here, the guy reveals himself to be Sherlock Holmes. While our girl states that she is Aya, this changes things. The policeman changes their destination to the mansion instead. There are a lot of reporters outside the mansion, including Miss Annie. We also get a glimpse of Eric undercover. Once inside, the gang is greeted by a butler. Phileas Fogg, the man himself, appears and greets the detective. Yes, he is the protagonist of the popular novel Around the World in 80 Days. Sherlock Holmes tells him that hiring two detectives may have been a bit too much. He alone is enough. But then Aya adds that she can also handle the case by herself. Eventually, they are all taken to the basement where the diamond is being kept. Phileas received this from a German friend, and he's pleased with a poetic text written around the gem. Sherlock promises that he'll make sure to keep it safe. Meanwhile, there is a professor and his gang. He tells them that he is soon going to meet an old friend. Aya Rindo is the old friend he's talking about. Back to our main character, Sherlock Holmes talks about whether they should close the small ventilation at the ceiling, and then states that Lupin is a master of disguises. He may already be among them. Tsugaru, on the other hand, asks if she has a plan. She replies that yes, she does have a plan, but it might be a bit too ridiculous. When he asks about it, she gives him a hint. She says Ishikawa Goemon. For the sake of the context, Ishikawa is a legendary Japanese ninja who stole gold and other valuable stuff from the rich and gave it to the poor. He's like the Japanese Robin Hood. What does that mean? Honestly, I don't know. In the morning, Tsugaru, Miss Maid, and Aya are sitting in a park when her birdcage gets replaced with an actual birdcage. On the other hand, Sherlock tells Watson how much he is looking forward to having this chess match with Lupin, though when Sherlock's brother arrives, he notices his nails are a bit off. Next, Sherlock himself arrives. Yeah, it was Lupin pretending to be Sherlock. He gracefully takes off the mask and reveals himself. Meanwhile, Miss Maid punches Tsugaru in the face because the birdcage he's holding doesn't have Aya in it. It's just a parrot. Back to Sherlock and Lupin, he tells Sherlock that if someone like Fogg was able to open the safe with the diamond, he can do it as well. Lupin escapes from the window and lands in a car. Eric is the driver. But they were about to hit Miss Maid. Lupin immediately gets out and asks her if she's okay. He is a gentleman through and through. Instead, she asks him about the birdcage. He doesn't know, but they give her a ride. Subsequently, Miss Annie sees Tsugaru looking for the birdcage. His face is swollen from the punch. Anyways, where exactly is Aya? When the old guy who thought he was carrying his parrot lifts the sheet, he sees a young girl's head. The man freaks out, and she ends up on the road. Soon someone drives over her. It's the two thieves from yesterday. They get weird ideas after realizing that although it's a head, it's still a woman's head. They take her with them, but Miss Maid notices them driving away with the cage. She tells Lupin and Eric to follow their car, and she also yells at Sugaru, who is nearby. The thieves end up crashing their car, and so Sugaru retrieves Aya. She tells him that he'll be getting punished later. There's also Miss Annie. She's delighted to see that our Rindo is okay. Miss Maid thanks the gentlemen for their help. Little does she know, they are Lupin and Eric. Lupin realizes that the lady in the cage is the cage user, while Aya also figures out that the gentleman is Lupin. Sure enough, Lupin introduces himself as Lupin. Honestly, Lupin is a bit too chill for a mystery drama. Sugaru introduces himself as the Demon Slayer. When Lupin asks what it means, he says he is stronger than him. However, when they fight, Lupin outsmarts and defeats Sugaru. This shocks Sugaru. He never thought he'd lose to anyone, let alone to a human. When night rolls around, it's time for the heist. All the security measures are in place, and Sherlock is as vigilant as my high school chemistry teacher. After they close the gate to the diamond room, he fills the locks with bullets. Now no one can get out of the room, and no one can get inside either. Everyone panics, but he tells them that there is no need to worry. They'll call a locksmith tomorrow. It will take hours for the lock to open, but they won't die with just a half a day without food. What matters is that Lupin won't be able to get the diamond between 11 to 11:30 p.m. They have already won. However, right when it strikes 11, a humongous amount of water pours down from the small ventilation, and the entire room starts filling up with water. Now what? Clearly, Sherlock Holmes didn't expect this. What about Aya, Sugaru, and Miss Maid? What role are they playing in all of this? I'm afraid I'll have to leave you guys at this cliffhanger, but the anime is still ongoing, so do check out the new episodes as they come out. As for this recap, what did you think of the story? Let's talk about it in the comments section below. As always, like, subscribe, and comment. It'll be much appreciated. Well then, with that said, we'll see you guys in our next recap, and make sure you give us a heads up if you want us to do a part 2 after the anime ends.